Welcome to the Gearage, the show focused on everything gear in the trail scene. I'm super lucky to be able to talk to co-founder of Free Trail, Ultra Pro, Dylan Bowman. Dylan, welcome to the show.
Cody Jet, my guy. How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I mean, if this has been in the works for a while, I'm glad we can get you on the show, really talk about Speedland, some of the other awesome things you got going on.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about the shoes. I mean, you're pretty much the biggest shoe nerd and gearhead in the trail space, so I feel like I'm in good company here to talk about the fun stuff I've been working on.
Absolutely. I'm definitely trying to be one of those top nerds out there. So, it's definitely working. I feel like you're one of the busiest mans in the industry right now. I mean, you just were over in Japan racing.
Yeah.
You hosted your own race, Gorge Waterfall. Then you're coming back and you're hosting different races. How are you feeling? How's recovery going?
Quite frankly, Cody, things have been quite busy, overwhelmingly so over the past several months. And obviously, I'm having a lot of fun with what I'm doing, but feels like we're sort of confronting the limits of our energy and of our bandwidth here within our very small team. I think a lot of people who see Free Trail think there's kind of a big, large enterprise and operation behind it, but the end of the day, it's just a couple of us that are really hustling on it. And so, I feel like we're on to something really cool, and all the things that we're doing bring us tons of joy. But at the end of the day, yeah, it has been pretty busy, pretty overwhelming between sort of running the business, doing all the stuff that we do on the content side of things, being a race director, traveling, being a family man. It's a lot, and I know you can relate, but again, life is rich, life is full, and I'm really excited to be where I am right now.
Yeah, I mean, besides being a media empire in the trail running scene, I mean, you're for and foremost a ultra runner. I mean, you had a hell of a race over in Japan. I mean, that was a nice performance, especially coming out of the gates in the 2023 season.
Yeah, man, thank you so much. Honestly, it felt really good, and I think for the listeners here, they'll resonate with it. I think, for me, I was just excited to be there, and I really enjoy all my visits to Japan. And when you sort of feel comfortable and happy with where you are, you can sometimes outperform your fitness level. And that was very much the case for me. And actually, going back to the first question too, when I was in Japan, I had like 3 or 4 days that were pretty unstructured before the race. And it was almost like my body instinctually recognized that it was finally our opportunity to chill out. And so I had basically like a 3, 4 day hibernation in Japan that felt so amazingly therapeutic. And so by the time it was time to go to the start line there on that Saturday afternoon, I was feeling rested, more rested than I've been in a long time. And so pushing 70K through the amazing Japanese mountains in the foot of Mount Fuji was just a wonderful experience. I have to say, the 70 kilometers felt like just the right distance too. I felt like probably the limits of my
All
capabilities
right.
and fitness level at that point in the spring. But I bounced back well. I had a really good workout this morning. And so now I'm first on the wait list for Hardrock, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And so now I'm kind of trying to figure out what to do between now and then.
There you go. I mean, 70K Rossbester, not that bad way to start the season. Usually I go with like maybe a 25K, a 5K, but go big or go home. Now, I know when you were out there, the shoe on your foot was the or the Speedland GS Tam, or I like to call it the Dylan Bowman signature shoe, or the Free Trail shoe. Dude, this shoe was freaking awesome. How did it handle the trails of Japan?
Yeah. So again, as you and I have spoken about, yeah, it's been an awesome process just to kind of work on the shoe and refine it over the course of the last 12 months. And it's been so fun to actually see it out in the world and see people on my home trails here in Marin who I don't know personally out there rocking my shoe. It's a feeling, I've always wanted to experience since I became a professional athlete. And, just having this opportunity at this point in my career, it feels like a new chapter and something I'm really happy and proud of. As it relates to the performance in Japan, yeah, it performed great. 70 kilometers. And for context for the listeners, it was about 7.5 hour race or so, so over the course of 42 miles, it had 13,000 feet of climbing and descending. So pretty concentrated vertical in that type of a distance. And the shoe performed phenomenally well. I actually ended up using a prototype pair, one of the early prototypes that I had, that had a black outsole on it. And the reason I chose to do that was because there's some trails in the second half of the race that are incredibly steep, where there's even ropes and stuff. The dirt is sort of like Marin, where it's non-technical, but it's so steep that sort of the loose dirt on top of sort of the hard packed earth, you can kind of skid on it. And so the prototype that I had with the black outsole had this super, super sticky rubber. It's a little bit better or stickier compound than that. And I was really happy I made that shoe choice. And you know, it was sort of a one-off, but it's one of those small details that made an impact on performance and that will likely incorporate into future product, as well as have an option with a bit of a stickier rubber compound, whether it's on a GS or more of an SL minimal type shoe. So anyway, it performed great over those 42 miles. I love the shoe. It's my favorite shoe I've ever worn. And I'm not saying that just because, you know, I helped in the process.
The logo's on there or anything like that. No. So, I mean, the question, if I don't ask it, I'm going to get killed. Plate or no plate for this 70K?
No plate.
Okay.
Now, yeah, I'd be happy to tell you about my sort of plate process, if that's
I would love that, because I always get the question, because you know my experience, I have a lot of miles on this, well over like around 70-ish plus miles, and I didn't go with the plate at all. I know a lot of times with this type of foam, a plate helps it because you need to stabilize it, but because the magic for this shoe is the width of the shoe. So how wide the shoe is, it is stable as hell. So I actually found I didn't need the plate. I was able to drop it, like drop the hammer when I needed to without a plate. And if I don't have that plate, kind of not crushing my foot, but in essence, I mean, a lot of miles with a plate on your foot. That's why I didn't need it, and this performed extremely well. Yeah.
Well, let's come back and talk about the stability thing, because I think that's important for the listeners too. But my process with the plate is that I probably use it 20-25% of the time in my training. I never have in a race that I can recall off the top of my head. And the reason for that is because, you know, for the higher intensity workouts that I do, especially those on sort of like flatter, non-technical terrain, just like the super shoes that are used in the roads, I definitely feel a performance benefit of having that carbon. And the Carbitex material that we use in the shoe is actually a really cool proprietary thing that Carbitex makes, where it's difficult to really explain, but it's really stiff in one direction, but then flexible in the other. And the way that it's split down the middle of the plate, it allows for really nice articulation on the trails, better than you get from a plate that sort of has single rigidity that's the same in both directions. So the guys at Speedland, again, sort of like focused on every single detail, including that one of like, how can we make a carbon plate that articulates in the way that you need it to for technical terrain. For me personally, I really only use the plate when I'm doing higher intensity workouts, usually when they're flatter and faster, although I do use them occasionally when I'm doing sort of like a hill repeat or an uphill tempo type workout. I would say I never use them in runs over, call it 2 hours. For me, I prefer sort of the flexibility, and I've always preferred that in my footwear, having like kind of a softer, more, I don't know, just like flexible shoe rather than sort of the stiff shoes with the big rock plates and stuff like that. I prefer the softer shoe with more cushioning. Over time, I just feel like my body, my lower legs and feet end up, you know, staying happier over the course of ultramarathon distance races. I am right there with you. The more cushier the shoe is, maybe it's because I'm getting older and that extra cush lets me rebound the next day, but those harder, you know, especially the ones with the rock plates, afterwards my calves are just killing me. And that's one of the things, like I said, this is that perfect, not too soft, not too firm. It really did feel like when I took this out on some East Coast, because we always like to say we got the Beast Coast, we got those gnarly trails.
You
Yep.
guys, you over in California, you got those velvet, no rocks to be seen. This was amazing on those types of trails, which I was called my wife and I was like, hey, I might need you to get me pick you up. I'm going to take this out on the rocky, rooty terrain near we are. Just if I break an ankle, come get me. No issues at all. I mean, it was like 18 miles out of the box, a
Yep.
lot of rocks, a lot of roots, and at no point did I ankle go. And
Yep.
that's huge for me. I know you deal with a lot of ankle injuries yourself, but as a person that has had ankle injuries his whole life, not having even one sensation of my ankle was clutch.
Yep. Yeah, so I was hoping we would come back to the stability point because this is one of the major things that we talked about in the course of developing the shoe. As you mentioned, I've dealt with multiple very serious ankle injuries. The most recent was a full avulsion fraction of my fibula in 2019 that put me down for basically a year. And to this point in my career, I've experienced at least one or two kind of bad sprains every year, and I've had two catastrophic injuries on both of my ankles. So the 2019 injury in 2013, I also did a grade 3 sprain of my right ankle. So my ankles, like you, are sort of my Achilles heel, and something that not only are always like bothering me physically, but are always on my mind with that proprioception, that sensation of rolling an ankle. And even just thinking of rolling my ankle kind of gives me the willies. um, so that was one of the things that I chatted about with Dave and Kevin as we were developing the shoe, is like, I want something that's like wide underfoot, that has that stability, because for me, that security, even if maybe you have to sacrifice on weight a little bit, is valuable. They were able to develop the system that well, with the drop-in midsole that sort of sits in the bathtub of the lower midsole. So it's a dual midsole system that we can talk about here in a little bit. But that lower midsole and that bathtub type construction allows you to have that enhanced stability where the foam sort of swallows your foot more or less, and that wider platform just gives you a more secure ride on the trails. That doesn't take the place of the various physical therapy exercises, the prehab and rehab that I need to do to keep my ankles strong and flexible, but it definitely helps and brings a peace of mind, and it's one of my favorite features on the shoe.
No, definitely one of mine too. And it's one of those things when you look at the shoe, you're like, that stack is huge. But
Yeah.
once you actually have it on, you realize your foot does lay in there, kind of what you mentioned, like that bath. And that's always the interesting part when you're looking at the dimensions of a shoe. I think I read it and I was like, that doesn't make sense, because that stack looks a whole lot bigger than the dimensions Speedland was giving out. So no, that's definitely one of my favorite features of it, especially if you plan on going long on the trails. It's one thing going short on the trails. A lot of times you can just suck it up with any shoe, but if you're going 3 hours, 4 hours out on the trails, it really is nice when your ankles don't come back hurting.
Yeah.
That you're not, because there's some shoes, and I'll be honest with you, afterwards, my ankle just has pressure on it. Either
Yeah.
just didn't sit in right. I kept like having to fight my ankle rolling or anything like that. It's just a terrible sensation. And it's one of those things when you find a shoe that doesn't do that, you're like, hell yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
sweet. So now you mentioned that you were heavily involved in the development of the shoe. Like, I know you signed with them a couple years ago. They had a couple models out. When you signed, was it, hey, I want to sign with Speedland and let's develop one of my signature shoes? Was that always in the works?
Yeah, it was. So maybe to pull back the curtain, I don't think I've really talked about this much publicly. So this will be fun for the listeners here. I originally became connected with Dave and Kevin, the founders of Speedland, through a mutual friend of ours, a guy named Topher Gaylord, who's been a dear friend and mentor of mine over the course of many years. He worked with them at Under Armour, which is where Dave and Kevin were working most recently, but they're longtime industry shoe dogs, more or less, and have held every footwear position at all the big brands that your listeners are going to be familiar with. And so they really know the footwear game front to back. And one of the things that was really exciting for me is that they wanted to take all that experience and apply it specifically to trail footwear. And as you know, Cody, trail running is my life. It's my vocation. It's what I've sort of devoted my entire energy towards for the better part of the last 15 years. And so seeing guys with their reputation, their experience coming in, I knew like, oh, this would be a really interesting opportunity for me to get connected with a brand at the ground floor, guys who recognize the spirit and value of trail running specifically, and who are coming in with a different model and a different approach. And I think in today's day and age, that's what you need to do in order for your product and your business to succeed, is to be differentiated. And so that was something that really spoke to me. But you're right. You know, when I signed, the only model that they had available was the SLPDX, which was their original shoe. I ran in it a lot, loved that shoe too. But for me, as sort of bigger, heavier athlete who focuses on the super long distance races, usually between 100K, 100 miles, I needed something with more cushion. And so that was part of the stipulation of me joining the brand was, okay, I'll do this, but I really like the SLPDX, but I need something with some more cushion. I wasn't the only Speedland athlete at the time who was making the same argument. And I'm really lucky that they listen to us and that they gave me the opportunity to sort of bring that first more maximal shoe to market, which we did with the GS TAM. The last thing I'll say too is one of the things that I thought was important too is just like making the price point a little bit more approachable. Like I really love the idea of having a super premium product and not compromising on the quality of the product. But for me also, I recognize that a shoe like the 275 price point of the GS TAM feels really fair to me. It's the type of price that I would certainly pay, that I would, buy a second pair once I went through the first one, sort of thing. And, that made me feel really good. And I think the market has really responded well to that too. Bringing the price point down a little bit without really compromising on the quality, and having a shoe that functions super well over those long course, mountain races that I love.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I was pretty critical with the first shoe. I think I was like, that's $375 for like a 50K shoe. Cause like that's just not enough stack for me. I think we all like to dream we're that nimble runner, but I'm more like a hippo running down the trails, and I'm okay with that. You got to know who you are. And I was like 375. And I remember me and you going back and forth a little bit offline. I was like, that's just a lot for a shoe. And you're like, stay tuned. It's coming. I'm like, I'm waiting. And then this came out and I was like, that's the stack I want. And not only that, but if you are a free trial member, I mean, you got a little extra cheddar off, and that was huge. I mean, that made this shoe, I can't remember what the percentage off was, but it made the shoe very approachable. I mean, if you're a free trial member and you got the shoe, I mean, because I do so many shoe reviews now, the cost of the shoes are so high now. Yeah. When you got just the 275 is a good price, but once you got that discount, I mean, it made it like a pretty darn cheap shoe.
Yeah, I think it was $220 for free trail members at the end of the day. It's really good price. I think fair
for what you're getting in the shoe. That's the big thing. I mean, you got the Tecton X that's 225. You got the Norda that's 280. I mean, you're putting it in. This like all of a sudden 220. You're like, that's a good price for a shoe. Yeah. All the price of shoes have gone up, and when I saw that price, I was like, hell yeah, that's a price that I think a lot of people can get used to. And I think that's why, at least personally, even on the East Coast, I'm seeing this shoe everywhere. It's like Waldo at like a starting lineup. It's like free trail or the Speedland. It's really cool to see. Yes. Not only that, but I run a lot of local trails, and I'll get stopped and be like, yo, is that the free trail shoe? I'm like, hell yeah, it is. How did you know? They're like, well, it's freaking orange, and I could spot it a mile away. You know what I mean? So it's really cool that I think not only did you take it from an idea, hey, I want to build this when I join on, and now you have it in your hands and you're dropping these great times in races. I mean, that's a dream come true for anybody. I don't care what sport you are. When you get a signature shoe, that's a dream come true. So like, how did that feel for you? I mean, you got this in your hands, you got your signature shoe. What does that feel like?
I mean, so cool, man. So cool. Everything that you said is exactly right. And the first prototype that I received fittingly was at Gorge Waterfalls in 2022, the race that we own here in the Pacific Northwest, just outside of Portland. And immediately I was like, okay, like this first prototype is amazing. Now, like, what can we do to make it better? And over the course of the next 12 months, we refined it to the finished product that you have there in your hands. But the question about what is it like to actually like bring that into the real world, it was really special. And the point of the first prototype story is that we started shipping the product just before Gorge Waterfalls this year. And so there was a ton of people, including a ton of free trail people at Gorge Waterfalls, rocking the beautiful orange shoes for the first time at a race that I own also. So it made it even more special. But, the fact that it has the free trail signpost logo on it was just one of those design details where, I can't do anything but say thank you to Dave and Kevin. It's just so cool to have a product of that quality with our logo on it. And you could even say that it's more prominent than the Speedland branding on the shoe.
Oh yeah. I mean,
And yeah, and so that's part of the, I guess, philosophy of Speedland too, is they really, because it's this commission model where they base it off an athlete and off a place, every shoe is sort of tied to those two things. They go out of their way to really emphasize, the spirit of the athlete and what's important to them. And as you know, really the thing that's most important to me right now in my life, aside from my wife and son, is free trail. And it's also been something that's taken up more emotional and psychological energy than I would care to admit. But it's also something that I absolutely love. That's been, like the funnest, hardest project of my life. And so having that represented on a great piece of equipment is something that's really special to me. And again, all I can say to Dave and Kevin is thanks for the opportunity. I learned so much through the process too. And those guys have been amazing partners, not only for me personally, but they're in their support of free trail too. So yeah, it's been really fun.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say is Speedland, they look like they support their athletes like crazy. You know what I mean? Not just you, but all their athletes, which is really cool to see if a brand do that. I mean, you don't have to, a lot of brands like, I gave you the shoes, I gave you your money, like go, like do your thing. The fact that they're supportive of you. I mean, they were just out at the Cocodona 250 supporting your teammate Don, seeing things like that, like makes you like, not only do you like the shoe, but you like the brand, you know what I mean? That always goes a long way with people. So now that's so cool. Like I said, seeing the free trail logo on there, I remember busting these out of the box. I was like, that's pretty damn cool.
Yeah. It's great. And like every athlete will eventually have their own signature shoe. The SLHSV was connected to Liz Canty. We're going to have one coming out here this summer for Cam Haynes. We'll have one for Avery Collins soon, for Don Reichelt. So, there's a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipeline from Speedland, and it is cool how they do support the athletes and make that sort of the focal point of everything that they do with the brand. And it's certainly something I appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I love the shoe, love, seeing it come to earth. But the one question I got to ask is, when you get a shoe you love, there's two things you hope for. One, it comes back for a second version. And two, if they do come back with a second version, they don't mess it up. Are we getting a TAMS 2.0? Or, I mean, what's the deal with this? I mean, the people gotta know. Are we getting a 2.0 over this? Because this is a freaking awesome shoe. This can't. So let me know. What are we doing?
Yeah, so good question. I'm not sure how much I'm allowed to reveal, but
we're with friends, man. You just go all confidential here.
Yeah, well, what I can say is that there will be shoes very similar to that, different commissions that are, basically the same, design and performance of the shoe that you're holding in your hand. So, but the thing that will never come back is that colorway with our logo on it. All those details, those will be resigned to the history of the Speedland brand. And that's one of the other things that I think is cool as we talk about differentiation, is the commission model that they employ, where it's not like, a Jordan shoe where you will see continuous drops of these, sort of like historical retro Jordans on, that come out of Nike and end up on StockX and stuff like that. I mean, that's sort of what we're going for with this, is like, we want that GS TAM to be a collector's item, right? There's a limited quantity of them. We're already running out of sizes, and once they're gone, they're gone. Yeah. And so hopefully in the future, in the course of, the next 5-10 years, it does become the type of shoe where if you see somebody with that orange version of the GS TAM, they got that in the spring of 2023. And that's sort of like a mark in history that never comes back.
mean, maybe next time we got to put the what number it is out of the lot. You know, you got number
Good idea. Yeah, it's a good idea.
You know, out of 5,000, whatever the number was. Now that's awesome. You know, I'll be honest with you, being selfish, I was hoping for the Dylan Bowman 2.0, the 3, the 4, the 5. I was hoping you were going the Jordan route. You know what I mean? Just personal opinion, and the other runners out in the world. So, you know, if Dave and all are listening, you know, let's you know, like I said, we're with friends. You know, let's just brainstorm this one, because, like I said, one of the coolest things about the Jordan shoe is seeing it from the 1 to like the 20 and how much it's grown, and being able to, you know, kids are now wearing them. You know what I mean? Yours a little younger, but it's soon they're gonna be wearing Jordans. Never thought our kids would be wearing Jordans. It'd be kind of cool if I saw my daughters, you know, rocking this shoe when they get a little bit older. So, you know, just throwing it out there.
No doubt. Well, one of the things that is certain is that things will change, right? And the model now is what it is, and there's certainly a chance that things will be revisited in the future. But yeah, it's been a joy to work on that piece of footwear that you're holding, and we're really proud of it. And I'm glad to just like see it out in the world, get tons of people DMing me positive feedback on it, and makes us really proud. And yeah, we'll see. I one thing that I am just like really excited about is the future of Speedland, the brand. Like, the guys are super smart. They really care. The materials are amazing. It's a really durable shoe. So with 275, like, those shoes last. They last a long time. So even though it's a premium product, it's a really good value. And that, you know, at the end of the day is what we want to deliver to the trail running market, is like a product that people really like, that's high quality, but that they get their money's worth out of. And I think we arrived at that.
The max miles you put on this? How many miles have you put on a tan?
First prototype, 600. And I could have kept going. I could have kept going in them. In fact, I have a photograph on my phone of the first prototype that I had, where Dave and Kevin basically told me, hey, just beat the hell out of these. You know, we need to figure this out quickly.
That's awesome.
And eventually they took them back from me. I would have continued to run in this pair of shoes. They were pretty banged up after 600 miles, but I would have continued running in them. And it's because of that P-Bax foam, which maybe we can talk about. But I ended up riding 600 miles on the white outsole there, midsole that's exposed. And it's now on display in their office in Portland, Oregon. So that'll be a fun thing to sort of keep in the archive. But yeah, they do last forever. It's amazing.
600 miles, you know, that's a hell of a mileage to put on a shoe. I mean, usually around 300 is when you start seeing a shoe die. So, you know, when you're putting 600 plus, I mean, you said they weren't even dead. I mean, that right there makes it worth the price. And that's what I would do, like miles per dollar. I don't care if you're spending cheap amount, like how many miles are you getting out of that shoe? Because I've had so many shoes where they're a little bit cheaper and I get 200 miles. I'm like, well, that really wasn't, you know, the mileage you were hoping for, you know. And I'll be honest with you, I'm a baby when it comes to it. Once it stops being soft, I'm like, gotta go, you know, I gotta go get another shoe. So no, that's really awesome, you know. But the one thing this hasn't seen yet is the Trails of Hardrock. So you're first on the list right now. Like, what was it, 2 years ago you threw down with Francois? Was it 2 years ago? Yeah, it was like forever ago. Coming in second place, you know, that was a hell of a battle. Now this wants to see Hardrock. How are we feeling about that?
I feel great about it. I mean, from a footwear perspective, I feel totally confident and comfortable that that thing will carry me all 100 miles around that amazing course. The thing that I have to, you know, sort of the thing that's up to me, that's my responsibility, is just the training and fitness element as we build up towards it. And as we started the conversation, I mentioned just like how busy I've been. And before we hit record, you said something that has been, you know, sort of told to me, and that it's a bit of wisdom that I'm trying to absorb recently, and that you can really only do two things well in life. And with a young baby boy at home and a growing small business, those take up a lot of my energy. And I've had to sort of, you know, sacrifice my running career at least a little bit. I'm really excited for Hardrock though. Like, it seems pretty clear that I will get in, knock on wood. And in the case that I do, of course, like, it's an honor to be able to run that event. And I think now, with about 2 months to get myself ready, I at least have a decent roadmap and a decent runway to get there feeling moderately fit. I will say that I really haven't been in peak fitness since Hardrock 2021. So if I can stay committed and disciplined over the next 8 weeks or so, I think I'll arrive with a decent level of fitness, but also like some freshness because I haven't really beat myself up and competed a ton over the course of the last 2 years. So, I'm hoping to arrive with the same energy and enthusiasm that I had in 2021, because I think that's what really gave me one of the best races of my career. And the day that I had on the course was just like, I was so happy to be there.
Right.
And, that's the type of energy that I'm going to try and channel. And from a fitness perspective, I'm just going to do my best to get there in the best fitness possible, understanding that life has changed in the last 2 years and there's other things that are really important to me that sometimes get in the way of just being a super committed, disciplined athlete. So I'm really excited for the opportunity, and I'm excited to just do my best out there.
I mean, you heard it here first. Our boys taking on Hard Rock. And I mean, going to Hard Rock gets that juices pumping. There's certain races you get on there and you're like, you're going to be throwing out punches. You know what I mean? You don't have a choice but get out there. But I will say, watching you dropped a video on your last one. Was it Peak Life or Peak Life?
Peak life experience, yeah.
Which is pretty damn awesome seeing you kiss that rock. But I'm going to seeing you cross the finish line holding your boy Rhodes kissing the rock. Now, I think that's going to bring some tears to a lot of people's eyes. I mean, I'm excited for this version of Dylan to be crossing that finish line. Whatever place you come in, throwing it down, having Rhodes in your arms. I mean, that's really what it's all about. That side by side image of you crossing that finish line. That's got to be a cool experience.
No doubt. Yeah, I don't want to jinx it because obviously those are 100 hard miles on the course that take out a lot of people. But if I could cross the line and kiss the rock, hold my baby boy, it would be another peak life experience for me. And he would be 11 months old on the nose that day if I were able to do it. So we do have sort of our accommodations booked now. The plan is to drive out there immediately after Western States. So I'll have about 3 weeks at high altitude to try and get used to the thin air up there in the San Juan Mountains. And then, just go try and put a good one on the board again at Hard Rock. It would make me proud.
Oh yeah, I mean, I haven't had a chance to look at that starting line, but I mean, it always brings some of the top folks to that one. So, besides the race, you got the juices of the race, you got the competitiveness. I mean, I'm excited to see what you can do. What I mean? To be honest with you, that's going to be a fun one, and the whole free trial fam is going to be right behind you, ready for that. So that should be cool.
Thanks, buddy.
Absolutely. Now, besides the shoes of rocking that. One of the things that I'm really intrigued about is your partnership with Goldwin, because I've heard of Goldwin, but more in the fashion industry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Kind of like a Zara, stuff like that, where they have a little bit of both. Now they're coming into the trail running scene. Like, what does that partnership look like? And what does that upcoming gear look like for us?
Yeah. So Goldwin is a very cool Japanese apparel brand that most Americans have never heard of, but it is a big deal in Japan. And I have been connected with the good people at Goldwin for many years because they actually own the North Face brand in Japan and South Korea. So as you know, Cody, but the listeners may not know, I was a North Face athlete for many years before leaving to join Speedland about a year and a half ago. But I've always had a great relationship with the folks over there in Japan that run the North Face brand from the Goldwin office. So it's a little bit confusing, right? There's Goldwin, the holding company, there's Goldwin, the brand, and Goldwin, the holding company, sort of owns also the North Face and many other brands in the Japanese market. So, having a relationship with them for many years, you said that them mostly from sort of like the lifestyle and fashion world, which I think certainly most Americans associate with the brand, those who are familiar with it. But it's at its core an outdoor brand. It was born in, probably like 60, 70 years ago as sort of one of Japan's first sort of like real outerwear, sort of a snow sports associated brand for a long time. And as you know, there's a lot of people in the current moment who just like are really inspired about trail running and wanting to find an association with it and a connection with the trail community. And Goldwin was one of those brands. And so we got to talking a little over a year ago. And we sort of like came up with this idea of like, let's develop a partnership. And they help us with the Gorge Waterfalls. They'll be sort of supporting some of our media efforts. And, at the same time, like Speedland, we're going to be developing some co-branded trail running apparel, which we're going to launch spring of 2024. So that's something that we've been working on for, the last several months. And I was in Japan just a few weeks ago and received sort of my first samples. And I'm so pumped about it. And I guess what I'll say is that it's sort of similar to Speedland in that it's a premium product. It's the finest Japanese textiles. Every detail has been considered. We have gone down the rabbit hole on every product and on every detail of every product. And that's one of the things that for people who, follow Japanese design, Japanese fashion, Japanese culture in general, even, down to the food and culinary scene, is every detail is always considered. And that's one of the things that is just so appealing to me. And so the product that we're going to be bringing to market is very much in that spirit and with those values. And so it'll be a mixture of different pieces: t-shirts, shorts, rain jacket, rain pants, socks, hats, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
But all sort of with a trail running twist, with sort of a more outdoor performance design rather than, something that you'd see on the start line of a road marathon, more or less. And so, that's what I can say for now, but it's, again, like the Speedland project, it's been really fun for me and a really cool new chapter. I was growing tired of the kind of traditional athlete model that I'd lived in, with various sponsors over the course of my career. And so this has been a really, really fun, new chapter with me for both Speedland and Goldwin.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you that. I mean, you went from, a North Face that's been established for quite some time. And before that, it was Pearl Zumi, if I remember correctly, or I'm pronouncing that correctly. And now you're with, Speedland and Goldwin, which definitely seems like, you went from, established to more of startup companies. You at least, Speedland startup. I know Goldwin has been around for a while, but getting into that trail scene, what was that just your curiosity? What was, you want more of a fingerprint on what you're doing? What was that thought process?
It's such a good question, Cody, and I'll try and describe it in a succinct way. But it all sort of evolved during the pandemic and just feeling kind of restless with what I was doing in life, and Free Trail was really starting to move in a new direction, and we were really starting to feel a momentum behind it, and our small team was really loving it, and we sort of decided to take a leap of faith on it and sort of devote our lives to it. And at the same time, as I mentioned, I was just kind of growing restless with the traditional athlete sponsorship model. Not that there's anything wrong with it. When I was 24, 25, there was nothing in the world that I found more satisfying and more, I don't know, it gave me more pride than just being a sponsored athlete, right? And getting cool free gear, getting sent on trips around the world, getting paid to just be an athlete. That was something that really appealed to me. Over time, that's just become less and less of a motivation. I really am now more interested in having a closer connection and a bigger impact on the things that I'm working on. And I also just have felt this energy in trail running specifically, where I just sort of have felt well, I feel like I can do this stuff just as good as anybody if I have the right partners, right? There's nobody who knows the sport better than me, right? I mean, there are people, but I'm very
You're up there. Don't be modest.
right. Yeah, but there's people who are as sort of committed to the sport as I am. But I've been in the game for 15 years. I know everybody. I've done all the races. I have great relationships. I've had amazing life experiences, and I understand, I think, not only the professional dynamic in the sport, but also the spiritual, sort of emotional, cultural dynamic in the sport. And I just love the game. And for me, it was sort of I want to do as much as I can to make trail running the sport that I see in my head, which is, something that really has a positive impact on the world, that changes people's lives. And it was just a fantastically cool way to challenge yourself. And so, the partnerships with Speedland, like I said, that sort of developed with a connection between a mutual friend and has been a lot of fun, but certainly like a big risk for me. I walked away from very secure long-term contracts as a 35-year-old athlete at the time, about to be 36-year-old athlete at the time. And, I sort of have bet on these brands, bet on their future, and sort of am really proud to have done that. And I'm optimistic about the future with both of them. But it was really born out of a feeling of like, man, I'd like to do more. And I feel like I can do more. And my experience in the sport, I think, can bring a new value to a new partner. And that's sort of like how that evolved. But I have to say, I did sort of set myself up with sort of like the highest risk, highest reward possible scenario. And
Go big or
sometimes
go home, right? I mean,
exactly, yeah.
but I will say, one of the things I think why people are drawn to you in free trial is that passion you have for the sport.
Mhm.
The sport that we all love, trail running, ultra running, whatever, you're on there. I think that's why people are drawn to you, your show, the company, Free Trail, that comes through. And now hearing you talk about Speedland, Goldwin, Gorge, all these things. I mean, that if you can't feel that passion, you should probably check your pulse. You know what I mean? And I think that's really cool, especially 15 years into your career,
Yeah.
something like that. I mean, to still have that passion is, I mean, it's pretty rare. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I mean, things have changed over time too, like the passion for the sport hasn't, but I was just articulating the fact that when I was younger, I was desperate to be a sponsored professional athlete, and that feeling has waned. And now, like, I'm more motivated to work on free trail than I am to be the best athlete I can possibly be too. That's evolved and changed over time, but I do really just love the game, love the sport, love the process. It's brought so much value into my life, and I hope to be connected to the community for as long as I possibly can. And I've set up my life in such a way to where if the sport can continue to succeed, then I'll continue to succeed. And that's nothing if not sort of like putting my money where my mouth is.
Yeah.
On my love for the game. And for that, at least I can walk away if things don't work out knowing that I gave it my best effort, and that I was authentic to that instinct.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and trail running and ultra running is really just on the climb right now. You know what I mean? We're not even near the peak of that mountain. We're still really at the base, I think. So that's awesome. I know it's been a while, but I just got to ask this, when you signed that contract, what were you, 24, 25 when you signed that first contract?
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the first one that was really meaningful, I guess I was like 25. Yeah.
How did that feel? I know it's been a while, you know what I mean? I got to dust off the cobwebs in that corner of your brain, but that's got to be a great feeling. I mean, like I said, 15 years as a professional runner.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what was that feeling like?
It was, yeah, definitely cool, definitely special. I grew up somebody who always was obsessed with sports. I played lacrosse in high school and college, and have just been a voracious consumer of all things sports and sports media since, before I can even remember. It's always been my passion. And I always like visualized myself as a pro athlete, even when I was, 6, 7 years old. Always thought it would be in like football, basketball, lacrosse, not necessarily in like long distance trail running. But yeah, it's funny how life changes. And at the time when I signed my first like real contract where I was actually being paid to be an athlete, it was right as my wife Harmony and I moved to the Bay Area for the first time. And at that point, I was very reluctant to move from our home in Aspen, Colorado to here where we're living again in Marin County. And it ended up being like a really pivotal and interesting moment in my life where we got connected with the San Francisco running company community, which was just starting at that time, and sort of fell into this amazing training group. And my career just absolutely took off at that time too. So yeah, appreciate that early commitment from Pearl Izumi. They've since exited the running industry entirely, but people will know them from cycling. Yeah. And then eventually moved on to the North Face, which was even a bigger deal to me. And then connecting with Red Bull, it was like, my career has just sort of been able to grow as the sport's been able to grow, and I've been lucky to work with some amazing brands over the course of that time. But yeah, that early first contract was a pretty special thing.
I mean, I always thought I was going to be the next Ken Griffey Jr. as a kid. You know what I mean? So that was my guy. So clearly not, but we're all doing our thing. Now, I
Yeah.
talked your ear off about the Speedland and Goldwin and everything like that, and I don't want to keep you too long. Is there anything else you want to talk about, plug before I let you go?
I mean, I'm just excited you're doing this project, man. I'm excited to tune in and listen because you and I, we share a love for this type of product. And I just think it's a really interesting time to be talking about it and to be having these conversations because there's so many cool brands now in the space. There's so much great product. When I was coming up in the game, it was like, I was actually talking to somebody about this just yesterday. The earliest trail footwear that I was using was effectively just lighter weight hiking boots. Now we have something like the GS Tan that's like a high performance, like trail running specific
Yeah.
product. And it's been whatever, 12 years or something. There's been a lot of advancement with the product, not only footwear, but packs and apparel, accessories. Everything now is really advanced. And so, yeah, I'm excited, just like with the state of the sport right now, the state of the brand landscape. And yeah, excited to just sort of like see how it continues to evolve in the future. And it's awesome that you're going to be covering it.
I appreciate that. Definitely appreciate you jumping on. Definitely go check out Free Trail. If you're not a member already, what are you doing? And remember, the Speedland, when it's sold out, it is gone. You're never going to get it again. You're never going to get this one again. So go check it out. If you're a Free Trail member, get that deep discount. Dylan, I definitely appreciate you checking this out and joining the show.
Yeah. Thanks, Cody. Appreciate you having me on.